one of the things we always talk about is, even though we don't necessarily answer or respond to all the comments on the videos, we do read them. And one of the common comments or common requests that we get is, can you guys talk about how you do your finances and give us, some financial advice and talk about how you run finances in your household. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. I'm gonna walk you guys through it. I will say, I don't do this solo in my house. My wife certainly does have feedback into our finances. I constantly keep her abreast, so it is a team effort. But since I do most of the accounting and bookkeeping, I'm gonna go through it solo, but she may jump in with some comments and some feedback here and there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started, guys. And you can see I'm wearing my Schoolhouse Rock t-shirt because this is gonna be an educational video. First off, let me start with the degree of humility, right? As I talk about finances and doing this video, please understand that I don't think anyone's finances and financial situation is something that is written in concrete or stone. We can all have changes to our life, to our lifestyle, to our family situation, to our mental health, to our physical health, that 1 minute we've got money and we're making a good salary and we've got money in the bank, and the next minute we don't. So tomorrow is not promised to any of us from a financial perspective. So I totally get that. The other thing I want to say from a humility perspective is, and I want to reach out to some of our maybe younger viewers, the perspective you're going to get in this video is from someone that's in their mid-40s, right? That went through their 20s, that went through their 30s, that's, rented apartments and bought and sold a couple of houses. And so I certainly recognize, I do think for my generation, it was a little bit easier to kind of get out and start out on your own in your 20s than it is for this generation. I think income equality is a big issue now. I don't think people are making the money that they should make. So I recognize that for millennials and even my son's generation, it is a lot more difficult to get out there and make a great salary and buy and get all the things you need without having a tremendous amount of debt. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything in this video. I'm gonna keep it 100% real with y'all. And the first thing I'm gonna say is, quite frankly, you need to make a little bit of money, right?
How do you do that?
Well, great question. I call it the trifecta, okay? Here's my trifecta for how you make money. And again, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This is basic stuff. 3 things you need. 1 is education. For the majority of us, that is formal education, right?
What does that mean?
Graduating high school, going to college, majoring in something that is a growth field, nursing, engineering, medical school.
So are you trying to dissuade people from doing maybe humanities as a major, as a formal degree?
I think it has to be a means to an end. If you're a humanities major, you need to have a career path that shows you, I have a clear path to be able to support myself in this field. I actually work, even though I'm in a technical field, I actually work with people that were liberal arts majors, but that were able to make the transition over to a technical field. So for those of you that don't know, I'm an engineer by degree, and I do work in a high technology field. So education, majoring in the right thing, and having a career path that goes along with that. And I do also think when we talk about education, I think for 90% of us that's gonna be formal, but that's also informal. If you want to learn a trade or be a cosmetologist or an entrepreneur or an entertainer, just educating yourself about the business side of a creative field is important. So education is as formal as informal. The second thing in my trifecta, my triangle, is hustle. Working hard. There is no substitute for elbow grease or hard work. I think we can all say we know people probably that are very smart or that have a lot going for them, but that quite frankly are lazy. It happens. We all know people like that. There's no substitute for it. The third thing is a little bit more, I would say, abstract. Soft skills.
Soft?
Soft skills.
Not sauce?
No, not sauce. You can have too much sauce. No, soft skills. What is soft skills? My mom and dad would call it common sense. Some people call it interpersonal skills.
Street sense.
Street smarts.
Street smarts.
Understanding what's hot, what's going to be the next big trend, what's going to be hot in the marketplace. Just kind of all these things that some people are able to move and understand and manipulate people and work with people and understand what's hot, and some people are not. Some of the books that we've talked about and that we've read, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the 48 or 50 Laws of Power, whichever one you want to read. And just that soft skills is also being able to make smart life decisions. And again, this is where, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. The relationships we have with people, spouses, family members, can affect our money.
How so?
Right? because life changes, difficulties in life, people that come into your life and take, are going to take your money, right? So that's a soft skill. So just making smart life decisions, not being able to be manipulated or taken by others.
Yeah.
And that can come in a variety of different formats, I think is key. So again, just to review, because I'm going to jump to the next topic, the three things are education, formal and informal, hustle, there's no substitute for hard work, and a variety of soft skills. So if you have children, obviously teach those children common sense and street smarts and things like that. So let me talk about the education thing, for example. I'll give you guys a real good example. Our neighbors who are fairly successful, right? We've got one set of neighbors, they're both doctors. Education, that I think everybody understands that, right? We've got another neighbor, owns a landscaping company, right? We've got a third neighbor that was a rapper. I don't think he actually lives there anymore, but rapper, third neighbor.
And you guys know who it is.
So
we won't give we won't do it.
Yeah. But all three of them they had to hustle, they had to learn about their industry or their field. The doctors more formally than probably the landscaper and the rapper, but all three of those are three very different examples of success paths. And our example in this household, we both went to school, got master's degrees, excelled in our fields. All right, so let's start off the next topic. Let's do the boring stuff first. This is not going to be anything exciting or super sexy. Let's do the boring stuff. Investments. What are investments? 401k, you've all heard this before, nothing groundbreaking here. You got a 401k in your job, max it out. Your employer should have a match. Max out on that as much as you can. If you maxed out on your 401k, you want to look at an IRA. That's another type of investment account that you can get that you can put money into. And again, I know some of this is based on salary, right? So that goes back to my first point of, quite frankly, in this economy, in this society, you do have to make a little bit of money. So 401k and a Roth. The next thing for your children, the minute your children are born, the minute you take them home from the hospital and you know you have a healthy baby that's going to go to college one day, look for, in Georgia it's called a 529 plan. I think it's called that everywhere, but it's basically a college savings plan, and all of these are tax shelters, right? 401k, Roth, 529 all have certain tax benefits. 529 is basically a savings plan that you can set up for your child for when they go to school. Try, even if it's as little as $25 every time you get paid, put money into it. You'll be surprised by the time they turn 18 how much money you've got into that plan.
And you've already touched on this, babe, but just going back to your first points where you mentioned education. Education, guys, you know, I'm a former educator. It is so important. Unless you're going to do like Eric said and just have the foresight to know about, let's say, for example, the apps. A lot of people have become extremely wealthy just knowing what is going to be hot. Okay, unless you kind of have the indication that your child is going to have that kind of foresight, education is absolutely the key to success.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because remember in my 3 points, I talked about education, but then I talked about soft skills. So a lot of people will look at, like, an extreme example is somebody like Bill Gates, and a lot of people that are in the IT world that they dropped out of college. But those are people that educated themselves in other ways and understood what was going to be hot way before it came out, right? So some of that is soft skills. The fourth thing on investments, and these are basic investments, 401k, Roth, 529. If you work for a company that sells stock, your company, like I'm in corporate America, and you get a discount on buying your company stock, buy that company stock. And only if, we all know if we're working for a company that's, man, this is a well-run company. Our company really has our stuff together, right? I work for Walmart or Target or Chipotle, and we just, the branch I work for or where I work, we making money hand over fist.
Now, you're not saying you work for Walmart, Target, and Chipotle, are you?
No, I'm saying as an example. Yeah,
okay.
As an example. If you work for one of these companies, you kind of have a vision, right, of where they're going. It's kind of a good way to buy stock, and it's, not necessarily considered insider trading unless you're very high up in the organization. And
also, you do not want to find yourself, just be careful. I think going with your more company business related investments are kind of a safer way to go. You don't want to find yourself in, let's say, a Barney Madoff or pyramid scheme type situation. Yeah,
and that's a great point. When I talk about 401k and company stock, you want to limit, right? You don't want to put 10% of your income into company stock. You don't want to put 10% of your income into one part of your 401k, like high risk stocks. Anybody that'll tell you about stocks, whether it's 401k or just buying stocks, you always diversify, right? You spread it out amongst different investments. You don't overinvest in one thing. The next kind of boring thing, and then we'll get into some more kind of tea time topics. In this day and age, when everything is automated, when you have apps and you can log in online, there is no excuse for all of us not to check our checking and our bank accounts and credit cards accounts at least, I would say, 3 times a week, right? If you have an American Express, MasterCard, Visa, you bank with Wells Fargo or Bank of America, you've got access through the internet or on your mobile phone or mobile app to access those accounts. And I am constantly, again, at least 3 times a week checking all my accounts. And I'm looking for several things. I'm looking for what are we maybe spending too much money on. A lot of these, like American Express, I know as soon as you log in, they show you a little pie chart of these are all the things you're spending your money on, all the different categories. Where am I overspending? 2, you're looking for fraud. And sometimes fraud can be a mistake. Here recently, we went and got a pizza. I paid for it online, or I thought I paid for it. Went into the store and got the pizza and they swiped my card again, found out they double charged me. But had I not been checking my credit card account, I would not have known that. So we want to be looking for fraud. We want to be looking for double charges. And again, back in the day, when you didn't have all these apps, you kind of had an excuse not to do it. But now there really is no excuse. We can all be cognizant and checking for fraud. Also, in checking for fraud, sign your family up for at least one credit monitoring service. At least one. There are a bunch of them out there. Some are great, some are not so great. Do your own research. Some of them you can get free with a certain credit card. Some you sign up for separately. But get a credit monitoring service, and they will monitor any open accounts. You can put freezes on your accounts. You can see when anyone's opened an account in your name. If a credit card is reported a late payment, or a late mortgage payment or a late car payment, you see that. And sometimes those are mistakes that we can catch. So definitely sign up for that. The next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of related to that, using technology. I'm old enough to remember back in the day, you had a checkbook and you wrote checks and you balanced your checkbook, in the little checkbook register. You did the addition and subtraction to figure out how much money you had in your account.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you can do all of that online. But what I also do, and we may include a clip of this,
the infamous spreadsheet.
I keep a spreadsheet that has my monthly budget. And I'm just adding and subtracting. And I reconcile what's in the spreadsheet with what is showing up in my banking account online, and I just make sure everything adds up. Because even in this day and age, if we have joint accounts, or sometimes we still write paper checks, we forget that stuff is out there, or we might need to budget for a large purchase next month. So I'm a big fan of using the spreadsheet. I know a lot of people will use like Quicken and QuickBooks. To me, that's a little bit of, I don't think you have to go that far, and I think that intimidates a lot of people. So what I'll do, I'll show you a real easy way to just do a budget on a spreadsheet that's take you 5 minutes to do it. A spreadsheet, for those of you who are not familiar with, spreadsheets, I kind of think of them as like a 2-dimensional calculator where you can do a lot of calculations at once. Spreadsheets can get really complicated. The one we're going to do is going to be extremely simple. And the spreadsheet tool I am using is Microsoft Excel, right? So we're using Excel. If you don't have Microsoft Office or not a Microsoft person, no fear. Google has the Google Sheets program, spreadsheet program, that is free. And with Apple, you get Apple Numbers, which is also free. And they work virtually the same as what I'm going to show you in this application. So for those of you that are familiar with spreadsheets, and I know most of you will be, the boxes that you see here are called cells. And the cells have coordinates. So for example, this is cell where I've clicked in here is cell A1. This would be cell B4. And it's cell B4 because it's the intersection of row 4 and column B. So this would be B4, this would be C6. I can click in any of these cells. So for example, I can click in cell A1 here, and I can start to type out a math equation. And the thing is, if you're going to do math inside the cell, you want to put an equal sign. So I can say equals 10 plus 10, hit my enter key, and it'll give me an answer, which is of course 20. So we're going to do math in a bunch of these cells. And the example I'm going to use for our budget purposes is something I think every parent should do, especially with their preteens or teens. I think, as we all know, most schools, high schools, don't really teach financial literacy, budgeting, home economics to our kids these days. So this is an exercise I went through with my son that I definitely recommend you all would try. And so my son is very interested in a career in law. and kind of has visions of being a public defender in New York. And I was trying to describe to them how expensive it is to live. Of course, he wants to live in like Manhattan. How expensive it is to live in New York. And so this exercise we took him through, we looked up some average costs and prices, and I walked him through, what his bills and budget would look like. So the first thing we looked up is how much does a public defender make? And this is just stuff we Googled. So a new public defender fresh out of school would make about $132,000 a year, which is a six-figure salary, sounds really high. Now, again, we're going to keep this really simple. I'm going to assume that they get paid twice a month, right? So we would divide this by 24 to get 5,500 twice a month. And I can either just type in, 5,500 into this cell, or if I wanted to get really fancy for all you folks that know how to use Microsoft Excel, I would type in 132,000, hit the little slash button for divide, and put in 24, and that's my paycheck. Now we're going to do, to keep it simple, we're going to say this is January 1st, so that's the January 1st paycheck. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Okay? Now, the next thing we did was we got to start subtracting expenses, right? And so, what's the big expense in New York? Obviously, it's going to be rent. We looked up the average rent in New York. It's around $3,600. And I don't know, some of you that live in New York are probably going to roll your eyes and say that's too low or not accurate. But this is what we Googled. So we're going to say equals 5,500, right? Because that's the money he has in the bank when he, gets his first paycheck, minus $3,600. And we're left with $1,900. Now, some of you are going to immediately say that know how to use Excel. Why did you type out the long version of that equation? Why did you type in 5,500 minus 3,600? The better way to do that would be to edit this and say, just put in whatever's in cell A1, and it's going to automatically highlight cell A1, subtract 3,600 from that, and you get the same thing. So that's our rent, right? All right, so cool. We've got $1,900 left in rent. Let's say our utilities are not going to be included, which they probably wouldn't be. So we're going to subtract equals 1,900, and we're going to keep it, again, really simple, round numbers, minus 100 for electric. And again, I purposely typed this equation the long way. I put 1,900 minus 100 to give me what was left over from electric. But really what you want to do is just type cell A2, right? And so these numbers that you see here in this column, this is what's left, right? So I started out with 5,500, January 1st paycheck. Then I subtracted, 3,600 for rent, then 1,800 for electric. Let's do equals A3 minus another 100 for gas, just using round numbers, equals A4 minus, let's do single person living in New York, eating out a lot. You're actually probably going to spend quite a bit on groceries for 2 weeks and eating out. So I'm going to put 300 for food. Taxis and subway in New York, a couple of weeks. And you folks that live in New York can tell me how accurate it is. I'm going to say minus another, let's say $300 over the course of 2 weeks for Uber and Lyft and taxis and subway, and so on and so forth. So you guys kind of get the idea. Now, let's say I'm writing a check, right? So A6, right? So now I'm writing somebody a check for something. Minus, let's say I go to the doctor's office or whatever, and for some reason they only take a check. So I got to write a $30 check for my copay, right? So I put A6 minus 30. So 1,100 minus 30 gives me $1,070. Now what I do here is I put check number, because I actually wrote a physical check, 455 to Dr. Strangelove, right? So that's how I keep track of the checks I've written. So for those of you that are from my generation or older, you would recognize this as basically balancing your checkbook. That's all I'm really doing. I am simply just doing this in Microsoft Excel rather than a physical checkbook. And to create a budget, what you do to create a budget is you simply repeat this, right? And of course, I don't have nearly all the bills. You'd have a bunch of more bills outside of this. I haven't included, entertainment and travel. We've got some medical expenses, but there are a other areas where you need to spend disposable income. But let's kind of jump ahead here. And the simple thing I can do, I can just copy this. I'm going to copy everything I've done so far, come down here and paste it. And then I'm going to say this is cell A7 plus my other 5,500. And Excel will automatically update everything for me. And this is my January 15th paycheck. So I basically continue, and I typically, when I do a budget, I will go out a couple of months. So I basically continue in these highlighted cells for at least a couple of months and kind of project, this is what I'm going to make, and these are my expenses. And if you want to get really fancy, if you have an accounting background, you would know that you put the expenses, you can come out here and highlight these in red, right? So these are red, and then the money you bring in is going to be green, right? So you can get fancy with it. And then, when you have, let's say, money coming in, like I'm going to get a tax return. So A14 plus, he gets a $2,000 tax return. So now we're adding money, right? And this is going to be in the green. So this is how I do our budget. Now, a couple of things. This is pulling from a checking and savings account. So I haven't done anything with credit cards on here. Every now and then I actually do want to log into my bank account's website and check and verify that the amounts I have in here for what I paid out is close to what's in the bank account. And if I missed anything, I just want to check and compare, because we all use our check card. Sometimes I forget, I use my check card at the grocery store, at the CVS today, and I forgot, right? So I always want to make sure I match this up with reality. Also, when I write a check, obviously when we write physical checks like we're showing here, this check number 455, that doesn't immediately hit our checking account online, but I have a note of it here. So I can kind of sync up reality versus, fiction in terms of my where I'm at financially. So let's just do another quick review, and I'll talk about a few other things. Again, I start out with a certain amount of money, the money I'm bringing in, my income, right? And that's in cell A1. Then in cell A2 here, I subtract my expenses from whatever is in the cell before it. So my rent is $3,600. That leaves me with $1,900. My electrical is $100. That leaves me with $1,800. So what you see in this column are my balances. What's also nice about a spreadsheet is you can go in and update, and it'll update automatically. So let's say instead of making $5,500, I get a bonus or something and end up with $6,000, right? Everything automatically updates, which is nice about a spreadsheet. Now, from a security standpoint, and how you track this and keep track of it, I keep this on a file sharing service, use like a Dropbox or a cloud sharing service, because a lot of us will use different computers to access it. So I don't just want to have this available on one computer on a hard drive. So keep it on a file sharing site so you can access it from your mobile device or any laptop that you use, even at work. But make sure it's a secure file sharing site. And you really don't have to worry too much about security, because there's not like account names. I don't have account numbers in here. It's just pretty basic, right? So there's not any, personal information that I would keep in this spreadsheet. And you can get a lot more advanced with this spreadsheet. I know a lot of you are very good at Excel, probably better than me. You can create all kind of charts and graphs about where you're spending your money. And you can also create notes kind of on the side about things you're going to buy in the future. So for example, over here on the side, I might put a note that says, hey, on March 1st, I want to start looking for, a new car, right? And I know I'm going to need, a $2,000 down payment, right? So just create a section where you've got notes about things you're going to buy in the future. And then also project out for as many paychecks or, income coming in as you can to kind of see where you're going to be at. Another thing I'll mention, I use this spreadsheet for budgeting, but this example that I'm showing with the example of a lawyer that lives in New York, I did for educational purposes for my son. And as we teach our, young teens, tweens about, going out and having a budget, really talk to them and encourage them to stay away from paying by credit card or paying by phone. The thing about paying, in a digital way in this digital economy is that there's something to be said for when you physically have cash in hand, as old-fashioned as it is, but when you physically have to hand over cash to someone, you feel that pain, right? If I've got $100 in my pocket and I've got to go pay, $75 and physically hand that over, I feel that pain. And so I think especially for younger kids that are just learning how to budget, have them handle cash more than they do a credit card. Make sure they've got that discipline before they start doing a lot of digital expenditures. Because obviously, I think as we all know as adults, when you have a credit card, it's really easy to swipe that credit card or pay by phone because you don't really see that bill until the end of the month. And so what I want to do on this spreadsheet is include some cash withdrawals. So for example, I know that when I get paid that day, I like to go to the ATM and take out $300 in cash. So here I'm going to put, subtract from cell A15 $300 for the ATM on, January 15th. So again, just encourage cash usage. And I know, the way the economy is going with digital currency and paying by phone and credit cards, your children are eventually going to go all digital. But I think it's important early on that they understand the importance and the physical side of handling cash money and what that means and being responsible for that. All right, so those were kind of some of the what I would call boring stuff, investments and spreadsheets. Nobody wants to hear about that, right? Let's talk about some more kind of tea time related topics. The first thing I would say is, if you've been subscribed to the Young Frumpy Mommy Life channel for a while, you probably know that this channel really started out, a lot of it was kind of crafting, do it yourself, a lot of sewing. And, the reason behind that is over the years, we've just learned to do a lot of things ourselves, right? Certainly we didn't start out, right out of school as young newlyweds, knowing how to be a handyman or knowing how to sew or how to cook or how to do our own yard stuff. But over the years, we learned that when you are raising a family and have a household, you can't afford to pay everybody to do everything, right? You can't have, or it probably doesn't make a lot of financial sense for most of us to have a yard service and a housekeeper and a handyman and, a repair person that comes over and fixes stuff. So using the power of YouTube, which you're watching now, there are videos on how to do just about anything on YouTube. There's our channel, and certainly there's a lot of other resources out there. So learn how to do things yourself, so you don't have to hire people out to do everything. But at the same time, you do want to hire people to do something. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is, the next big thing is, you can't ball out on everything, right? We hire people for some stuff, not for others. The same thing with what you buy. Again, one of the, I think, unique things about our channel is that you might see a dollar store haul video.
Which is, there's nothing wrong with.
Nothing wrong with that. We've got a bunch of them. And you might see a Gucci haul video, right? And so we don't discriminate. We don't have any self-esteem issues or conceptions about ourselves where everything we do has to be fab. I think it's great to want luxuries in life, but I think you have to be careful, and you just have to make sure you have enough money to financially support. Where I've known people where they got to have the latest cell phone, and they got to buy 3 bottles of wine a week, and they got to shop at Whole Foods, and they got to shop at Neiman's and Saks, and they got to have every year they get a new laptop and a new car. And so a lot of us have small children, have newborns, for those of us that have babies, and I think there's this temptation to introduce our children at a very, 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 very young age to designer labels and designer goods. And what I would say to you that have little small kids, they're going to grow up. Most likely you're going to have teenagers, and trust me, they are going to come to you and ask for Nike and Adidas. And in this day and age, I even see the high school kids wearing Gucci, which blows me away. So this is just a suggestion. Do what you want to do with your children. While they're babies and they're not asking for that stuff, let them be babies and enjoy.
There's nothing wrong with Carter.
Yeah.
Carter's. What was the one we used to go to all the time?
Gymboree. Even Target and Walmart.
Yeah.
They get that stuff dirty and they grow out of it.
Yeah.
And it's, so avoid that temptation. It's funny, obviously we live in Atlanta, right? So we watched the show Atlanta. And I think it was episode 8 of this season or 9, really good episode where, Donald Glover kind of brings back something from his past where he goes to school and both him and another boy come to school in the same FUBU shirt. Right, so this is back in the 90s.
Right.
And one of them, they both get ridiculed for having quote unquote a fake shirt. Right, so we just have to be careful introducing that level of materialism to our children at an early age.
Right.
And so in our household and on this channel, you may see you know, a Louis Vuitton haul or a Gucci haul, but understand too, we're not, and we do clip coupons. We look for bargains, we look for sales. I would definitely say we're not extreme couponers, but we look for bargains and sales, you know, just like everybody else. And we've talked about some of those in some of our other videos. My wife is always talking about, hey, this is a great bargain or this is a great tip. As a matter of fact, if you check out a video I did a couple of weeks ago talking about this basement, that is a great example of, you know, living luxuriously for less. There are a lot of things that we bought in this basement that we just went out and bought, that we paid top dollar for. And there are a lot of things that we did or made or built ourselves. So guys, do me a really big favor. I know we certainly don't have all the answers. And I know a lot of you guys run tight ships and run great households where you're able to save money. You know, give us some tips. Give the other people on this channel some tips in the comments. Let's talk about this and let's try to make this an ongoing conversation.